We wouldn't have to spend any new dollars. We have reserves at our 12 Federal Reserve banks, including gold certificates that could be converted to current fair market value. They're held at their 1970s value on the books, and then sell them into Bitcoin. That way, we wouldn't have to use any new dollars.
You're down 95%. Have you ever considered selling?
No, I can't. That's a no.
What's going on, guys? K-Dub here with another episode of Crypto Zombie. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a great day today. Now, last week was a wild week for Bitcoin, altcoins, crypto in general. The tariffs coming out from Trump, and then, this morning, Mexico having talks with Trump, and they're not going to do the tariffs till next month. And then you had the S&P falling, Bitcoin falling, and now everything's back up again this morning. Very, very strange indeed. We're going to go over probably, what this could all mean for Bitcoin and crypto. There's a lot to go over, specifically, actually, with the altcoins, surprisingly. But if we have a look really at what's happening here, you could see that we were in this upwards channel, and then we fell into the downwards channel, right? This heart line, we are back above it. But really, ultimately, what we're starting to do is, if we just kind of come over here and we just sort of draw this parallel channel, something like this, you can kind of see that if we get rid of, let's say, get rid of this and get rid of this, ultimately what we're really starting to do is put in this sort of sideways channel, right? I can adjust this a little bit, maybe to there, maybe come down here a little bit. But I think the point I'm trying to make is you can see we're really just consolidating sideways. And every time we come up around 108, we crash back down to the bottom around the 90 and we bounce back up again, right? And then people are, every time we have a pump, we're going to $1 million. And every time we have a crash, people are screaming that, it's over. Guys, this is just part of the market. In fact, I just want to point something out super quick. We've had a lot worse drops over the history of Bitcoin. There's two things to point out. First of all, this right here is what people are panicking about, number one, which is insane. It's ridiculous. I mean, we've had, look at this COVID crash right here. I mean, this was down in a month, right? Bitcoin fell 57%. So, I mean, this little 15% isn't that much of a deal. And also, on the bright side, if you want to talk about something pretty cool, Bitcoin closed right here, its highest daily candle close ever in history. So, this is officially the highest close ever. It closed the candle at $102,437. So, there's a lot we can discuss. One thing just to point out is while you're having a lot of these retail panics happening, if you really have a look at the large investor, so the large investor is this sort of maroon colored line, and then this purple line is retail, and you could see that retail is the ones that are actually selling, the ones that are actually scared, and the accumulation is happening really with these larger investors. So while the little guys are essentially panicking and not taking advantage of the dips, you're having the big whales scooping up this Bitcoin. So, again, if you are selling your Bitcoin, you have to ask yourself, who exactly are you selling your Bitcoin to, right? So I just want to go over all that today. Also, didn't get a chance to mention, congratulations, Michael Saylor, making the cover of Forbes. Again, people are saying, oh, it's a top signal whenever a crypto guy, gets his face on a magazine. I don't think that's the case this time, guys. So let's talk about what is happening. First, I did just want to mention, though, we did have the $200,000 prize pool over at Blowfin. If you do want to get in on those deals, you can use the link below in the description. The same goes for Femex over here, which is obviously a great non-KYC exchange, $50,000 a day. And of course, we do have the $3,000 cashback on MetaSignals. Check that out below if you are interested. So moving on over here. Obviously the big thing last week came down to Jerome Powell and the FOMC and the Fed meeting, and Donald Trump was basically, he had said in an interview that he thinks that Powell will listen to him about, lowering the rates. They didn't do that. So that's where we had this sort of retaliation. So he says, I will do this by unleashing American energy, slashing regulation, rebalancing international trade, and reigniting American manufacturing, which then went on to have these tariffs that were going to be imposed 25% on Canada, 25% originally on Mexico, 10% in China. And this created a bunch of panic in the markets for, because nobody really knew what this meant. Short term, it could have been bad. It was something we really weren't prepared for. And if there's one thing that markets like the least, it's uncertainty. Right? If you're anticipating something bad or you're anticipating something good, at least you know where we're headed. But when you don't know, that's when you tend to see those really, really crazy markets. In fact, there was like over $2 billion in liquidations, which is insane. Some people saying as high as potentially $6 billion, which would mean that would be the largest ever of all time, even worse than FTX, which is absolutely insane. So if you guys didn't see a little bit of it though, they were, even though they're, the FOMC and the Fed Powell, they're not 100%, they don't really care either way, truthfully, when it comes to Bitcoin, but they were saying that they are willing to work with Congress to set up crypto regulations.
I do think it would be helpful if there were a greater regulatory apparatus around crypto, and I think that's something Congress was working on quite a lot. We've actually spent a lot of time, with members of Congress working together with them on various things, and I think that would be a very constructive thing for Congress to do. Our role with Bitcoin really is to look at, with crypto, really is to look at the banks, and we think it's, banks are perfectly able to serve crypto customers as long as they understand and can manage the risks, and it's safe and sound. As a good number of our banks that we regulate and supervise do that.
So obviously these are baby steps, right? But these are things that would have never happened, under the previous administration. And granted, it's not that we need the banks or we need anything for Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin has put in all-time highs for 15 years straight, and we didn't have anybody helping Bitcoin out, but it is just something that helps to make more people who are looking to invest feel potentially a little bit more comfortable getting some of that exposure, right? And the thing that's interesting is a lot of people are trying to compare this to last time, but like Kevin Svensson points out, in the 2021 cycle, the Fed was maxing out QE. The cycle started off strong, but slowed down in 2022. In 2025 cycle, the Fed is utilizing QT for as long as possible. The cycle is starting off slow, but will likely pick back up in the second half of the year. And there are a lot of people that are anticipating at some point some rate cuts, right? Which would obviously be better for risk assets and borrowing, right? Because it's very expensive to borrow the higher the rates are. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. It's not exactly the same as last time. And, the big thing that I know everyone is kind of tired of hearing about this, but, we're only really into what, like the second week of the presidency? It's not... I know in crypto every day is like a year, but you have to understand that there's obviously clearly a lot of bigger issues that the president is trying to deal with in the beginning. But Anthony Scaramucci says that the USA is going to buy 500,000 Bitcoin, and they're going to do it soon.
Do you think we'll get a strategic Bitcoin reserve? Do you think that's a thing?
I do, actually.
What does that look like, do you think?
They've got the votes. Haggerty wants it. McCormick wants it.
They have the votes in the Senate, do you think?
I think so, yeah. There's 53.
Really?
I do think so, yes.
For to her bill to get 1 million Bitcoin, right? That was her full bill,
yeah,
right?
Well,
to keep the 200,000 then.
This stuff gets horse traded. So you'll probably have 200 won't get sold. They'll probably buy another 400,000 or 500,000 Bitcoin.
What?
Over the next.
You
don't
think
that's
this is
going to
real?
happen?
Senator talk about it.
Let me tell you why I think it will happen. Okay, Trump wants it to happen, and he's got the Senate Banking Committee. Tim Scott wants it to happen. He's going to be the chair of the Senate Banking Committee. Bessent wants it to happen. If you're telling me there are no Democrats, and I don't believe this because a lot of Democrats voted for the Saab 121 bill. If you looked at the dispersion of vote, it was a bipartisan approval of that bill. And by the way, Ryan, it was if you were 40 or 50, let's say you were below the age of 60, you voted for the bill if you were a Democrat. If you were a fossil like Elizabeth Warren or Sherrod Brown, you voted against it. So if you're telling me there are no Democrats that are going to vote for that, then I'll say, okay, then we're not going to get it. But I don't see that. I think Ro Khanna would vote for it. I think there's a lot of Democrats that look at it and say, if Bitcoin is digital gold And we have $600 billion of gold on reserve at our bank, in the Federal Reserve Bank. You're telling me we couldn't put 75 to $100 billion of Bitcoin on reserve?
And again, just to reiterate a few quick points, I don't mean to keep repeating the same things, but while everyone is panicking over, a 17% dip, look at what's going on. We have pro-Bitcoin Scott Bessent has been confirmed as Secretary of Treasury. He owns $500,000 in Bitcoin ETFs, so he has exposure, right? And like Cynthia Lummis had pointed out, she's basically saying that she is proposing for the strategic reserve that we buy 200,000 annually, hold for 20 years, and the goal is that she believes that the U.S. national debt could potentially have in 20 years with this strategy.
So why Bitcoin would make sense as part of our strategic reserves is that we recognize other long-term stores of value and put them in strategic reserve. We have a gold strategic reserve. We have an oil strategic reserve. I think it is fitting that Bitcoin, now that is really digital gold, be included among our reserve assets. So I'm proposing in the Bitcoin Act that we purchase roughly 200,000 Bitcoin a year just by converting money we already have into Bitcoin and hold them for 20 years. If we did that with, say, 5% of all the Bitcoin that will ever exist, which is roughly 1 million Bitcoin, we could cut our debt in half in 20 years. And in the meantime, we would have an asset that's growing in value while our own dollar is decreasing in value. And thereby we could shore up the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. What that does is help us protect ourselves against inflation and protect the US dollar on the world stage.
Also, just mentioning, North Carolina says they're going to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. We have over here, Arizona could become possibly the first state, right? I already mentioned Florida to you guys. We have Vivek Ramaswamy saying that Ohio's strategic reserve is thoughtful and powerful. Over here, we have the state of Illinois introducing a bill for a strategic Bitcoin reserve. I mean, I could go on and on. Texas strategic Bitcoin reserve bill is now the top priority of the government. You can see right here, Senate Bill 21, establishing the Texas Bitcoin Reserve. This is literally considered a priority by the state of Texas. I mean, these are just things that we've never seen before. So, saying that this is the time to be bearish, I completely disagree with that. I think that this is the time to start waking up and realizing that it's only gonna get more crazy from here. And, getting back to Cynthia Lummis again, some people are like, well, where are you gonna get the money from? Are you gonna have to turn on the money printer to buy the Bitcoin? And she says, no, we wouldn't have to do that. We can already use what we have in our reserves.
We got off the gold standard a long time ago. My question is how much you would spend tax dollars at a time where we're talking about trying to reduce costs. How much would you spend on Bitcoin as part of this reserve?
We wouldn't have to spend any new dollars. We have reserves at our 12 Federal Reserve banks, including gold certificates that could be converted to current fair market value. They're held at their 1970s value on the books, and then sell them into Bitcoin. That way, we wouldn't have to use any new dollars in order to establish this reserve. The United States already holds over 200,000 Bitcoin in the asset forfeiture funds. So that would be the initial source of Bitcoin. So no new money spent on this reserve.
So that's pretty crazy, actually advocating for the sale of the gold reserves to switch into the Bitcoin reserves, right? And that's kind of like what we've been saying all along, is Bitcoin is gold 2.0, but much, much, much better, right? You can send it anywhere. You don't have to, imagine trying to get on an airplane with a, box of gold. I mean, that's just like not feasible, right? And, again, look at this. Parliament member says if the U.S. starts buying Bitcoin as a strategic reserve, all the European countries will get FOMO. Game theory has started playing out. Over here, Czech central bank to approve the proposal to assess strategic Bitcoin reserves. Here's another article. Head of the Czech central bank wants it to buy billions of euros in Bitcoin. So I mean, I'm not really seeing all this negative news that everyone else is seeing. Maybe it's just the tariff thing that's freaking some people out. But like CZ says, imagine being the last government to buy, right? Game theory is playing out. What was interesting, if you want to talk about gold, listen to this. The weight to withdraw bullion stored in the Bank of England's vaults has risen from a few days to between 4 to 8 weeks. And they say Bitcoin is too slow? You want to wait 4 to 8 weeks for your gold? Oh, speaking of, by the way, guys, Senator Mendez, I don't know if you remember this guy, but, everyone's always saying, crypto and Bitcoin, and it's just for criminals, and it's just for money laundering and scammers. Well, Senator Menendez, who fought against El Salvador adopting Bitcoin, was just sentenced to 11 years in prison for taking bribes in, that's right, my friends, gold and cash. But Bitcoin is the enemy, right? Nah, that's just what they say. Sometimes the guys that talk the loudest, they're the ones who you should probably worry the most about. So, talking about these tariffs, I don't know enough about this personally to be able to speak on this. I'm not like a tariff guy. You get 50% of the internet saying it's terrible, it's going to harm the economy, we pay the price, the inflation goes up, whatever. Even Trump himself said that at first it might be a little rough, but then you have a lot of other people that are saying, no, this is going to be extremely beneficial long term. Look at what used to happen in the past. So this guy, Jeff Park, I'm not going to read through all this, it's a lot, but, down here, I had this originally highlighted. I don't know why my highlighter went away. But basically, if you come down here, he says the asset to own is Bitcoin. So in a world of weaker dollar and weaker U.S. rates, something, et cetera, whatever, risk assets in the U.S. will fly through the roof beyond your wildest imagination, for it is likely a giant tax cut will have to accompany the higher cost borne by the loss of the comparative advantage. The tariff costs, most likely through higher inflation, will be shared by both U.S. and trade partners, but the relative impact will be much heavier on foreigners, et cetera. The outraged citizens of these countries will experience a mini financial crisis and look for alternatives. And unlike the 1970s when the world was largely offline, today we are online. In fact, we are on chain. So while both sides of the trade imbalance the equation, they will both turn to Bitcoin. So he says, you simply have not grasped how amazing a sustained tariff war is going to be for Bitcoin in the long run. Again, I'm not a macroeconomist. I don't understand the implications of this. Somebody let me know. But there was this video that I found extremely helpful from Chicago One Ray, and this guy was sort of explaining the past history of tariffs and, the effects that they had on the US. So again, I don't know if the economy and the structure is just like too radically different from 100 years ago, but this is what he had to say, and I want to just play this video for you.
What if I told you there has only been one time in US history in which our national debt has been completely paid off? And it was done with tariffs. It was done by President Andrew Jackson, who would use tariffs to reduce the national debt from $60 million to zero by the time he left office. And he did this with no federal income tax. In fact, there was no federal income tax in the United States of America until Abraham Lincoln tried to impose one during the Civil War, which was a 3% tax on income. It lasted 10 years and it was imposed during wartime. And then in 1894, Grover Cleveland tried to levy an income tax with the Wilson-Gorman Tariff Act. And we'll get to why that's so important. But the income tax would be taken to the Supreme Court in Pollock v. Farmers, and they ruled the income tax to be unconstitutional, which is why Congress had to change the Constitution in 1913 so they could levy an income tax. So there was essentially no legal federal income tax the first 137 years America was a country. So under George Washington, there was no federal income tax. Under Andrew Jackson, there was no federal income tax. Under Teddy Roosevelt, there was no federal income tax. But everything would change after the 16th Amendment and the passage of the Revenue Act of 1913, which established a 1 to 6% income tax, and just as importantly, reduced tariffs from 40% to 26%, just like the Wilson-Gorman Tariff Act of 1894, which established an income tax and reduced tariffs, because the powers that be were about to shift American power from the people to international banks and international corporations, who paid most of America's taxes up until 1913. But after 1913, the majority of taxes were paid by people like you and me. The purpose of the federal income tax was always to replace tariffs, so that you and I would replace international corporations as the government's primary source of revenue. And it was tariffs that empowered America to become the manufacturing center of the world before 1913. American steel, American oil, American automotive all became the envy of the world under President William McKinley, who levied a 50% tariff on almost all imports. But when they got rid of tariffs and replaced it with free trade, it became a race to the bottom. A race to outsource American manufacturing to whichever countries offer the cheapest labor. To outsource your jobs to whichever countries offer the cheapest labor. As free trade has always been a race to the bottom. And it is the economic lifeblood of global governance and those who wish to subvert American jurisdiction and sovereignty. And the powers that be will gaslight you and say things like, the cost of tariffs gets passed off to the consumer, which is true in that international companies are forced to raise their prices. But over time, that allows American companies to actually compete with them. And because of that, they start to expand, could build in bulk, and start to get their prices down. And as they expand, they need more labor. And more jobs open up in new manufacturing plants. And you need more managers and more skilled people, and wages start to go up. Especially if the flow of immigration into the country is stopped. And then there's more jobs, higher wages, and affordable products. Andrew Jackson paid off America's debt in full with tariffs. And America became the manufacturing center of the world under William McKinley with tariffs. And I don't know about you, but I think it's about time we start putting Americans first again.
So this is already having certain ramifications, specifically, for example, the Canadian dollar. Now, while the US dollar has actually been rising, the Canadian dollar took a massive crash to levels not seen since about 2003. So it says Canada prepares pandemic level stimulus. Every country will respond this way to economic hits caused by tariffs. So if they decide to turn on the money printers, which they're going to do anyway, I think we already know what this means for things like Bitcoin, right? So like Joshua Jake said, maybe this is the strategy. Place tariffs, crash markets, increase USD value, cause trade war, negotiate historical trade deals, reduce tariffs, cut rates, back to QE, take credit for booming markets. I don't know. Is that the plan? Is it a conspiracy, or is it right out in the open? I don't know. But at the end of the day, I know that all of these situations, from my experience, regardless of what they do on either side, they raise, they lower, ultimately, it just leads more people to Bitcoin. It really does. People get sick of watching their hard-earned money waste away, in a bank account due to inflation and, massive taxes and all this stuff. And yeah, holding Bitcoin has really just been that strategy. And, the other thing to point out is the Bitcoin reserves are falling like crazy on exchanges. You could see right here, they are at massively low levels as price and demand are increasing. And if you want to see a really crazy chart, now this is theoretical, take this with a grain of salt. I'll explain to you why this probably won't happen. However, based on the current trajectory, of the estimated Bitcoin supply available and the demand that we're seeing, Bitcoin's purchasable supply will run out in August of 2027. This is with no acceleration, which is likely, So basically, in a nutshell, if we continue having Bitcoin reserves on exchanges drop and the demand basically stay the same or increase, then at this rate, there should theoretically be no more available Bitcoin as of August 2027. Now, again, this is theoretically. The reason I say theoretically is because as the price rises, I don't care if you're a long-term holder, a long-term believer, you're the smartest trader in the room, you're the dumbest retail ever, people are going to take profits, right? At some point. If you get Bitcoin at $500,000, you don't think these OGs from 2013 are going to sell? They're just going to keep sitting on their Bitcoin? They're going to sell some. And in order to sell it, some of that Bitcoin is going to end up back on the exchanges, right? So no, I don't believe we're going to run out of Bitcoin. But theoretically, it's interesting to just think about the massive amount of demand. I mean, we may not run out, but it certainly might be difficult. You might see some OTC desks drying up, and I do think that that will clearly accelerate the price, especially if you start getting demand from actual countries, which is a very big possibility based on a lot of the stuff that we've already gone over today, right? So again, if we just look at the Google Trends RSI, and this is from CryptoCon, you can see that there's usually these phases, right? You have the down, so you can see these boxes right here. So if I zoom in, you see you have the downtrend breakout, the second cycle move, then you have the new all-time high, followed by the first cycle top, and then there's usually one more push, right? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right here, for example, we actually had a bit of a double top, right? So this was a very interesting pattern. And back here, you can see we've already started the downtrend breakout, right? Right here, we broke this line that was holding us down for almost a year and a half, and then we began up. So it says that we're possibly more than halfway through the cycle, but it is still suggesting that there is some more potential if history was to play out where you have the final 2 cycle tops, right? I mean, we only basically just barely broke the all-time high. And like Credible pointed out, these are really interesting things, right? So you have open interest declining by 20%, 10 billion of spot market selling, funding is flat, spot premium has replaced the perp premium that spiked during the last rally. So, again, having these resets with these massive liquidations, which definitely sucks for people who are basically gambling. Like I said, if you guys want to use leverage, you find these trading accounts where they're like doing 10x, 25x. That's cool if you want to do that. It's very high velocity. But really, the easier trades are to just place, like, for example, just to go way, way, way back here, right? So now that we have this defined channel, right? So you could say like anything around 93, you long, right? And long with like 3x or 4x or something like that. Something where you're going to require like a 25% drop to get liquidated. And, again, I don't know if I would short the top because we are in an uptrend. You could technically have shorted like around 106 and been correct each time, but I think it'd be more beneficial personally, not financial advice, to long, this bottom area because I do believe that we will eventually continue that momentum to the upside. So, again, just having a look super quick at what we have going on, we are really just retesting this area. Right? We're coming down to the 0.786 and we're retesting at the 1. So we've had this Fibonacci extension literally for months on this channel. And you could have just played this box up and down, up and down, up and down. But eventually, the same way with, we had some consolidation in here, eventually you're going to have that break. And the next area is the 1.618. And, you can see there's nothing in here. There's literally nothing in this area. So that suggests that, down here we have a lot of spots, right? A lot of places we could bounce around if we go down. But if we go up, the next area is up here at around $136,000. So, and this could happen very, very, very quick. Just like we consolidate, people get bored, boom, 100,000. It really, really could happen that quick, guys. So that's the thing that you need to pay attention to. Here's the channel again that I kind of showed you that we're forming right here. And we do also, what's interesting is we have this major uptrend that started down here. This was back in September. And we've had 1, 2, 3. This was a little bit of a bear fake out down here. But for the most part, this has held support. And what's really super interesting is you could see when we broke this, we had a perfect retest here, right? And we came down and we were just shy of this area right here. And then if you look at where we are today, the candle is back above it, right? So, I mean, with the exception of this fake out right here, there's no denying that, we're in a pretty clear uptrend at this point. And same thing here. This is just a longer version of the parallel channel. And you can see that we're still just basically consolidating here on the heart line. So again, this is why if we continue to move here, and we come up, that's how you end up getting that, $130,000, $140,000 Bitcoin, which I do believe we will touch the top of this at least one more time before the end of this cycle. And yeah, I mean, we still do have a CME futures gap down here, but, just because something has a 96% chance doesn't mean that it could be that 4% that, doesn't actually happen. And I mean, just to kind of zoom out here, if you look at the weekly, when we go into this, I know the super guppy, it's a pretty stupid name, but when we go into this green, we tend to stay into this green for a very, very, very long time, right? And right here, we flipped into it. And that was around 38,000. And, you know, the last time, just to kind of throw it out there, we stayed in the green for about 630 days, okay? And from the bottom to the top, not saying that this is going to be similar, you know, we had a 438% move that lasted 540 days, right? So, you know, I'm not saying diminishing returns. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but currently we're about right now 440, right? So, you know, you could say maybe we're getting towards the end, possibly, but like I said, if anything, I would say we're more of about 3/4 of the way through. I wouldn't say we're quite through just yet. I would anticipate that there would be more of a blow off at some point. We still have a lot of the indicators that haven't even fired off yet, saying that it's overheated, you know, or it's, you know, overbought or something. We really don't have that. So right now, I would just pay attention to the macro trend. And the one thing I did want to point out again is, you know, okay, so this is Murad Mahmoudov's list. He used to be more Bitcoin crypto, but I don't know, he just went like full on meme coin. I don't know why. And, you know, he's been preaching about how everyone's going to make all this money. And this is the performance since October 16th when these are recommended. You know, Retardio, Daddy, Kobe, Rich, Brainlit, Mother, Billy, Glorp, whatever, Skibidi, whatever, Selfie. I mean, massively down 70% to about 95%. And this is where the majority of people are trading. They're trading these meme coins. They're trading these ridiculously risky altcoins. And, I mean, you could do what you want. It's a free market. I would never tell you what to do. But I just think that it would have been a lot more productive to just dollar cost average Bitcoin over the past 2 years and have a guaranteed, you know, percentage portfolio increase than gamble with all your money that you made this week overnight on one coin, only to lose it, wait for your paycheck again next week, and then gamble all that money, away too. Yeah, you might get 1,000x. You might, but the majority don't. The majority hold for too long. You know, they don't know what they're doing. And if you want to look at the decoupling, there are literally millions of altcoins right now, and they used to be more correlated. You can see right here, you know, altcoins used to be very correlated with Bitcoin, right? You have Bitcoin being the gold and black being the altcoins, you know, correlation. But what's happening here? See, this is what's weird. You know, Ethereum hasn't even put in a new high yet. And Bitcoin has put in multiple. And, you know, the altcoins, there's just too many of them. There's too many altcoins. There's too much demand. There's too much supply of the altcoins, and there's not enough demand. I mean, even if you have a look, right? Let me give this a quick refresh so you know, be live about it. So, yeah, I mean, look at this, guys. So Bitcoin on the 7-day is only down 0.9%. So that's pretty much nothing. Bitcoin is down 1%. Ethereum, however, is down 12%, XRP 9%, Solana 9%, BNB 10%, Dogecoin 15%, Cardano 15%, you know, whereas Bitcoin is basically the same price that it was a week ago. And what's crazy is if you just take Ethereum as an example, I don't have a chart pulled up, but you could just go back historically. Every time, for example, let me see. So every time Bitcoin falls below 100K, so basically this center line right here, every time it fell below, you had Ethereum. Ethereum was 37, 36, 35, 34, 33, 32. And then today it fell down to 2,700. And it's like the altcoins are getting hit really freaking hard every time Bitcoin is just bouncing around. And it's making the sentiment crazy. Like I go over to X and it's like, if I didn't know what was going on and I didn't look at the charts, I would literally think that crypto and Bitcoin are having the worst crash of their lives. And maybe for crypto, some of it is, but the Bitcoin chart is fine, which is why, you know, this channel is primarily Bitcoin. You know, I'm not against the altcoins, but my goal is to make sure that you can help yourself to become financially free and also understand the power of long-term dollar cost averaging and holding Bitcoin, right? So, I mean, I don't even get, I don't even, this channel isn't even monetized. If you guys are seeing ads on these videos, that money's not going to me. YouTube shut down my monetization. They won't tell me why, probably because I talk about crypto. I have no idea. But anyway, guys, that is it for me today. I wish I could have made a video outside, but it is freaking hot out today. So I'm inside. These are some of my Bitcoin. This is actually pretty cool if you guys want to check this out. I got some Bitcoin stuff that I bought. This is this cool Bitcoin. Oops, that's about to fall. This cool Bitcoin artwork that I found. This is hand painted. This is like a 1 of 1. It's like a reflective bull. This is pretty cool. And then I have this other one back here that you can see standing up. I gotta hang these up. There's been a lot of renovation. This one is pretty cool too. It's like $1 with Bitcoin. It's all neon. I don't know if you guys can see this. So I don't know if it's getting on camera or not, but that's pretty cool. So I'm looking to hang up some of this Bitcoin artwork at some point. But yeah, like I said, guys, right now my house is a little bit of a mess downstairs. So, but anyway, guys, thank you so much for coming back to the channel. You guys rock. You're the reason that I make these videos. And yeah, I think that's about it. So obviously, if you guys do want to, remember, check out MetaSignals. They do have only 2,000 NFTs ever. This is for Trading Edge. You get a bunch of bonus stuff. You get a bunch of crown stuff. So, there's only less than 900 remaining. And again, if you guys do want to check out Blowfin, you can check that below. And Femex2, they have a $30,000 giveaway. So if you guys want, I got 2 tutorials popping up right here. You can check them out. I know this video was a little bit long, but I haven't made a video in like a week. So anyway, hope you guys are doing well. Don't freak out. Everything will be all right. Until next time, stay crypto, and of course, peace out.